This is the Everything Weight Loss podcast with Shari Ware, where we talk about everything, all things, anything to do with weight loss, health, and wellness. So today I have Kerry Madgwick, who is a clinical nutritionist, clinical hypnotherapist, trauma release specialist and instructor, mindset coach, speaker, and author of If You Believe You Can Heal Yourself, You Can. Kerry guides her clients to release past stress, trauma, and limiting beliefs that are holding them back by helping them take control of their health, happiness, and learn to manage their mind to change how the past plays out in the future so that they can move into thriving, embracing the core principles of living a healthy and happy lifestyle with simple and easy techniques that work. I love simple and easy. That's definitely good. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kerry.
Thanks, Shari. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I agree. I think simple and easy is definitely the way to go. People tend to make things, I don't know, I think we learn from a young age that things should be complicated and they shouldn't. So yeah.
That's absolutely right. So the very first question I'm going to ask you, because I feel that it's really important for people to know our story. So what is your story? Why do you do what you do?
So my story starts, a long time ago. And I guess the beginning of it, although I think sometimes we don't realize the beginning of the story till we're kind of halfway through it or towards the end. But so we moved country. I was mugged and I was carjacked. And I never realized at the time the impact that had on my health. And it was just kind of, it was just one of those things you just got on and you lived with it. I never had counseling around it. I was told I had to go on antidepressants, which I didn't want to do. I took those for a while and they made me feel absolutely awful. So I just stopped taking them. We then moved country, which again was just one of those things that you do and get on with, and didn't realize the stress that came with it. And within about, I guess, not even a year, I started to get quite bad stomach problems. So I'd had stomach issues in the past, but they'd kind of resolved. And then it was from there that it just continuously got worse until the point where by 2:00, 3:00 in the afternoon, I was lying on my sofa in agony. I had so much pain. I wasn't sleeping. I was sleeping probably 2 to 3 hours a night, which I think anybody who knows that, sleep is really crucial. Yes. So if you're not sleeping, then that just has the added impact of the anxiety, and everything was just kind of snowballing. And it got to the point where I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know what to do. I'd seen numerous doctors. I was lucky in that my GP was, she was really helpful, but she kind of said to me, well, you're stressed. And I went, what do I do about that? And she went, well, apart from antidepressants, there's nothing else you can do. So that was then my mindset of, I'm stressed and depressed and there's nothing I can do about it. But I think having grown up in a family where medication was never our first alternative, I then looked to find ways of finding what was causing the problems, because I knew there had to be kind of a root cause, that things don't just happen overnight. I was fortunate in that I found a book written by a professor about irritable bowel syndrome and spastic colon, and I followed those kind of guidelines, and my health started to improve. But I guess the missing piece of the puzzle was always the mindset for me. And it wasn't until I realized that I could manage my mind and I could choose how I felt and my thoughts, and that I could make those changes, that everything kind of fell into place. And that's what led me, I guess, to the meditation, mindfulness, hypnotherapy, because it was understanding how important that aspect of it is, that I think you can never truly heal just one part of your body. It's got to be mind, body, spirit. It's all got to work together. It can't just be one or the other.
Yeah, absolutely.
So leading from that, I guess, is that I realized that if I could do it for me, I could do it for other people. And I knew there were a lot of people suffering. I think I was in my 30s, before I realized that I could manage my mind. I thought my thoughts were just my thoughts, and that was how life was, and you just had to get on with it. And I realized that a lot of people I knew felt exactly the same way. So that's kind of where I set out to actually go, do you know what, we can manage our health, we can manage our mind, we can choose something better than what we have at the moment. So that's what led me to where I am now.
Yeah, and that's life-changing, isn't it? When you finally get that concept that we have a choice in the thoughts that we live our lives by. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
So if you were to have a superpower, what would you say that would be?
So for me, I would say it's my ability to help people understand the simple and easy way of doing things. I did things the complicated way. And then realized actually that there are simple and easy ways of doing it. So that's my superpower, in helping my clients do things in a simple and easy way, rather than going the whole complicated, changing everything overnight. It's just taking the little steps to make the big differences. So
yeah. So tell us, there's two things I want to know more about. I want to know more about the book, If You Believe You Can Heal Yourself, You Can. And I also want to know more about any specifics around the trauma side of, because that's what you specialize in, is helping people with the trauma. So what kinds of impact does that have on people's lives that they may not be aware of?
Okay, so I think the thing with trauma is that we don't realize that a trauma is just a frozen moment in time. And we, as a hypnotherapist as well, that what happens is we think that our memories are real, but they're not. We keep revisiting that certain trauma, but with a different perspective and a different memory. And the more it replays in our mind, often the worse we make it, rather than making it better. And we tend to focus on the negative parts of that. So I'll give you an example. When I was hijacked at gunpoint. And I kept replaying, what could I have done differently? Because in the moment I reacted, I insisted on keeping my handbag, which probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, but I kept replaying, what could I have done differently? How should I have reacted? When I couldn't change any of those things that had happened, and there was not, as much as I revisited, I couldn't change it. And every time I did that, it made it worse. It made me feel worse. It made me feel more guilty. And every time we do that, we're creating this stress in our body, because our stress hormones don't identify whether we're running away from the danger in that present moment or whether we're revisiting it in our mind. And by having those stress hormones continuously released in the body, but we're not doing anything to address them, we're then creating inflammation in the body, and that physical trauma then becomes internal inflammation in the body, and that will come out somewhere, somehow, depending on, I think it is kind of, I guess, somewhere related to genetics. We all, I think, tend to have weakest links in our body. For some people, it's skin issues. For some people, it could be asthma. For some people, it's stomach issues, joint pain. So all of those things. So I think it's understanding that the trauma needs to be released and let go of, shall we say, in order to heal our bodies. And the interesting thing is I think there's a Japanese art, and I don't want to pronounce it because I'll probably get it wrong. I think it's called Konsugi, and it's a 4,000-year-old art. And what happens is, when a vase breaks, they put the vase together with gold to mend the cracks, and then they put lacquer over it. So that to me was amazing, because you have this vase that just looks like an ordinary vase, but it is so resilient, because the cracks have been mended with gold, which
is beautiful. Wow, that whole concept is just beautiful.
Yeah, so, and it's amazing thing is that we don't realize that once we've been through a trauma, we've survived, we've come out the other side. And it's understanding the positive experiences and the resilience that we've brought out of that. And that's why I like the analogy of the vase, because yes, it was broken, it's not the same that it was, but it's stronger and more resilient, and it has these beautiful, although you can't see them because they're underneath the lacquer, it now has these beautiful lines of golden that strengthened the vase going forward. And I think that's the important thing to understand. And the connection with our health is that most people I see who have health issues have had some trauma. And I think it's also understanding that, and I don't want to make a big picture and make everybody think that they've had some trauma somewhere along the line, but I think we tend to talk about post-traumatic stress, and we relate it to people who've been in the military, and we don't relate it to people in their everyday lives, of someone who might have been verbally abused, someone who may have been physically abused, someone who's had deaths in the family, someone who's had to move house all of a sudden, or has had a divorce, and all of these things, whilst we kind of, I think, it's a good saying, we white knuckle through them because we just go, it's life, we have to get on with it. Those things all impact us if we don't deal with them. So,
and I guess it's about being aware that if you've got some issue in your body and what you're doing is not helping it, then this could be something to look at. Maybe there is something there that needs to be, that maybe you weren't ready to deal with before, but it's time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that the reason that I like the trauma release process that I do is that it's not about someone coming back and talking about the trauma, because that's what we've said, is every time you talk about it, you're reinforcing it. So it's not in talking about it, it's enabling the client to find 2 points that are neutral and collapsing the trauma in the middle. So they're not talking about it, they're not going through it again, they're releasing it and taking the positive things that they've learned, the attributes, the resilience that they've learned through that, taking that forward into their life and releasing the guilt and the trauma that they possibly couldn't have controlled anyway in that moment in time. So
yeah, awesome. So tell us more about the book. If you believe you can heal yourself, you can.
So the book came out of my journey of healing myself. The title, If You Believe You Can Heal Yourself, is because I always say to people, if you believe that there's something different, you will look for it. If you don't, you will never find it. So that was that was for me, is I believed there was something else. I believed that I didn't have to be on medication for the rest of my life. I believed there was another way for me to solve my health issues, and I found those. So that was where the title of the book was. And then it was just the 7 basic steps, like I said, keeping things simple. And it was just about helping people understand that it is just those simple steps. It's being consistent. It's looking at what you're gaining rather than what you're losing. So I know specifically you deal a lot with weight loss. And sometimes when people say have to change the way they eat, and they look at, oh, I can't have that anymore, I can't do this. And instead of looking at it that way, just think of what you're going to gain, of how much better you're going to feel, getting up and moving every day. Whilst it might seem a challenge the first day you do it, by the 3rd or 4th day, you're actually looking forward to it and enjoying it. And it's just about those little things. So it was just my 7 steps of ways to heal yourself, of the things that I thought were the most important in managing your mind, getting your nutrition right, moving, meditation, mindfulness. So, and I just wanted to share my journey, and my whole aim was that if it helped one other person, then I knew I'd done what I needed to do. So
yeah, makes it all worth it, even just helping one person, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Awesome. So what I want to go with now then is, so when it comes to the people that you work with mainly, what would you say would be, before they come to you, what would be the biggest things that they do that don't serve them? It's just that they don't know what they don't know, but what are things that they do that you see regularly and it just doesn't help?
So the things I see the most is people not understanding that they can manage their mind, I think, is the biggest thing. Yeah. And it's the the mindfulness about the things that they do. So as we know, a lot of people do things out of habit, and I think it's not identifying the habits that are not serving them. So for instance, I had a lady who came to me who was continuously watching the news, and she was getting really frustrated and really worked up, and I said to her, why don't you just stop watching the news? And she's like, oh, could I do that? I'm like, yes, of course you can. It's your choice. Stop doing it. And I think this is the thing, is that, you know, we all know that looking into someone else's life is a lot easier than looking into our own sometimes. But I think it's food choices. I think we've had a long history of kind of the low fat dieting. People still don't understand necessarily that low fat is not the best way forward. It's how much sugar that they're having in their diet that people don't realize. And there's the connection then between actually your physical health and your mental health, and vice versa. So that's often what I see the most, is that people are making, I don't want to say poor food choices, but I think it's just food choices that they don't understand, and they're not correlating what they're eating to how they're feeling. Once they make that connection, then it's a lot easier for people to make different choices.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that's why I do. One of the reasons why I decided to start my podcast is because there's a lot of people out there that don't know what we know about nutrition. It's just because they've never been taught. So having conversations like this more often, because then more people are going to, you know, get that message that, oh my goodness, okay, it does have an impact, and maybe there's some things I can look at with that, which is awesome. That's what this is all about.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the amazing job that you're doing, is spreading the message, because I think the more people who are out there talking about it and finding different ways, and we know not everything works for everyone, so having different people that you can listen to someone and go, oh my god, that makes so much sense.
Yes.
You know, I was saying to a colleague the other day, sometimes you can listen to something 17 times and suddenly the 18th time you hear it, you're like, oh my goodness, that makes so much sense. So so I appreciate you doing the podcast and, you know, sharing what you share as well. I think it's really important that, and thank goodness we're able to get out there and do that now with technology and everything. So
that's what makes it so easy. So what would you say would be some steps and that they can take for, you know, for their best health and wellness, and what would be the biggest step, or the most important, or the easiest step that you feel that they could take to improve their health?
So I think the most important, but probably not the easiest step, is for people to learn to love themselves. I think that, you know,
you're speaking my language.
It's a challenging one. It's a challenging one, but you know, I always say to people, you listen to, I always call it the monkey mind, because your monkey voice and your head just chatters away incessantly all the time. And I say to people, you would never say those things out loud that you say to yourself. You would never say them to anybody else. So it's about learning to manage that and learning to love yourself. And I know Louise Hay does her mirror work, where you stand in the front of the mirror and say, I love myself. And I know that seems really awkward, and we're always told, if you love yourself, you're egotistical and you're so full of yourself. But do you know what? We just need to learn to love ourselves, because once we do that, we want something better for ourselves, because you want something better for everyone you love. You want better things for them. And I think so often that can be the core of the issue. So I would say to people, stand in front of the mirror, do it when you're brushing your teeth, if that feels better, when you're, you know, for ladies, when you're doing your makeup. And even if you can't say, I love myself, just say, I'm learning to love myself, or I'm willing to love myself. And that leads to that. And it is something that, you know, I always say, it's simple things done consistently, day in, day out, that we need to be doing. So that's one simple thing, as I say, not necessarily easy, but it is simple, and it's worth it. That I will promise you, it's worth it.
Yeah. And it also opens the space. Mirror work is something that I definitely suggest to my clients to do. And I've actually recently just, I'm doing a program at the moment that some of my ladies are doing mirror work with, and it's allowing them to, it's bringing things up for them that they never realised before. It's giving them new awarenesses by doing that process every day, which is so beneficial. So I love that.
Amazing. Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is when you bring up those awarenesses, whether they're helpful or not helpful, that's the way that you deal with them, is by bringing them up. And I think the mirror work is important. As women, we're terrible, aren't we? We're like,
yes,
oh well, there's the spit sticking out here, I don't like my legs, I don't like my hair. And I would say just focus on the things that you do really like, and slowly that will come. So
that's right. Yeah. Awesome. So what I will do is I will put all the links to connect with you further, Kerry, in the show notes. So a link to your book and how to contact you for people who want to do that in the future. What I will ask you now, though, as a final question is, if somebody was listening to this or watching this and you wanted them to walk away knowing one thing, what would that one thing be?
So I think the one thing for me is that understanding that life is messy and complicated, and that's okay. And it is about the journey. I think so often we're so focused on the destination of where we need to go that we forget that actually the journey can be enjoyable if we allow it. So that's what I would like people to understand, is that we can access optimal health and wellness. We can achieve whatever we would like to achieve. It's just learning to manage your mind. And I think that's the thing, is just enjoying the journey and the process of getting there. It's not, I think someone was saying the other day, I was in a clubhouse room, about enlightenment comes at the end of the journey. It doesn't come in the middle of the journey. So I think that's it, is, we all want the, enlightenment or the solution to happen tomorrow. But what if the journey was part of the process, and your joy in getting to achieving what you wanted to achieve?
I love that. That is I could not say it any better. That's an awesome place to end the podcast on. Thank you so much for joining me today, Kerry.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful. And and I hope, as you say, it reaches someone and makes a difference to someone. And, I'm more than happy for anybody to contact me. I'm on all the usual social media platforms. And I have a couple of free meditations if anybody, would like access to those as well. So
I'll put all of the links in the show notes for you all, and I'll see you all on the next episode. See ya.
Thanks, Shari. Take care. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. Remember to check out the show notes, and if you have any comments, feedback or suggestions, I'd love to hear them. If you've received value from this podcast, make sure to subscribe, and I'd love you to rate and review the show. Have a fabulous day.